Sag nochmal den Plan für Freitag. Testing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. This is the Ohio clock. 2 o'clock post closure or post policy lunch video or whatever we're doing here. Sound good? Okay. Testing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. All right. All right. I got the back side of this, but it's probably too small. Okay. You good with audio? Testing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Test, test, test. All right.
What are you guys doing?
Who knows? I know not. Is that the Kardashian steakhouse? I can't. Don't know. Caucus.
So, if you want to look at your schedule,
Yeah.
let's do that.
Particular day of the week.
There are a few days that are a little more booked than others.
why don't I just do this? I'll tell you when I can't. Yeah, because I've got a couple of obligations already. I've got a.
There's some advantages to that first week on our end. I will say that. I do know if you're in town, that like the late afternoon and that Tuesday afternoon, I'm just thinking off the top of my head.
Yeah.
That Tuesday afternoon, Memorial Day is pretty good, late afternoon.
Yeah.
I know that Friday, I think it's pretty good, another Friday.
Okay.
The very final day, so that's the first day, the very
Yeah.
final day.
Photographers are good on Fridays, so lighten it up. I loved your piece. I was talking to, I ran into Senator Kennedy, John Kennedy this morning, who's got a little time on his hands waiting for a TV interview to start. I was talking about it, and he asked me, I sent it to him. Said, I was wondering why he voted Brad. Pompeo was going to win anyway, but the only person throwing it was Menendez, but he was holding the line.
What's the problem?
No. Was he? Was he following the lead?
11 to 9.
Yeah.
But what they asked for, the committee's running, how do you guys, well, since it's not proxy, it is proxy. Yeah, proxy is not. 11 to 9. So technically, they don't think he's not voting.
It was like Tinkhurst to Evans to Chance. It was Corker to Queens.
We're a little early today.
Oh, we're early.
Everybody's so happy and in a cooperative mood, we finish early. What can I say? Yeah, first I want to congratulate Chairman Bob Corker of the Foreign Relations Committee for being able to move forward with the Pompeo nomination. All of you have seen the newspapers across the country, including the Washington Post, coming out in favor of his confirmation. I think the fact that only 3 Democrats so far have indicated their support is kind of a new low. I mean, who would argue that Mike Pompeo is not totally qualified to be Secretary of State? Nevertheless, with the few Democrats who have come on board, we'll be confirming him later this week. I think it was a great choice by the President. All of our members obviously are now comfortable with the choice, and we look forward to confirming him later this week.
Especially hard to reconcile are the statements that are being made by 15 Senate Democrats who voted for Director Pompeo to be director of the Central Intelligence Agency, and in almost all those instances now they oppose his nomination to be Secretary of State, coming up with one lame excuse after another to essentially try to mask the fact that they're afraid to say no to their political base, who believe that President Trump should not get any of his team confirmed and want Democrats to oppose him at every step, no matter how much nonsense is involved. So I do want to say Senator Chris Coons, I think last night demonstrated the kind of civility and that we don't see as much anymore. We used to here in the Senate, and I want to commend him. He certainly reserved his right to vote no on the nomination, but allowed the nomination to go forward through the Foreign Relations Committee yesterday, and I think he deserves our applause. But Director Pompeo will be confirmed, and the question is how much will partisanship on the part of some Democrats cause them to embarrass themselves by being in the strange position of voting to confirm him to the CIA, but then voting against him for Secretary of State.
Yeah, and I think the leader put it well. This really is a new low here in the Senate in terms of nominees. We have a wide array of threats around the globe that we have to deal with. We have a nominee who is supremely qualified to be Secretary of State, a position that we desperately need to have filled, particularly with everything that's going on. And we have a long tradition in the Senate of confirming Secretary of States with big bipartisan votes. You know, Hillary Clinton in 2009, it was 94-2 coming out of the Senate. In 2013, John Kerry came out 94-3. I mean, these are overwhelmingly bipartisan in the past in terms of the tradition here in the Senate. And it's really hard, and I'm sure you guys have asked, when you ask Democrats what their reasons, their rationale are for voting no. I just don't know. I can't think of a logical reason they can come up with. So most of them are coming up with some fairly strange, bizarre explanations as to why they wouldn't want to support this very qualified nominee for this very important position in our government. But I want to read for you something that Senator Schumer said back in 2013. The quote was, "Who in America doesn't think a president, Democrat or Republican, deserves his or her picks for who should run the agencies? Nobody," end quote. So this is an example of needless obstruction that is based purely on politics, and it's really time for it to come to an end. And I hope that there will be more than 3 Democrats when this vote comes up on the floor later this week who will be reasonable enough and wise enough to realize that this is an important position to fill, a qualified nominee, and something that the United States needs to be fulfilling its requirements in terms of the confirmation process.
Well, as a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, we voted yesterday on Mike Pompeo. He came out of committee on a strict party line vote, This person has the intelligence, the integrity, the ability, and this is the right person for this job. We could go through all of his qualifications, but there is this effort by the Democrats to deliberately delay the process, part of their obstruction that's been going on against this president. The national newspapers, very clear, confirm Pompeo one after another after another. And it's interesting when you see that the Washington Post fact checker has come out to confirm what we've been saying and what the president has been saying, that to get his nominees in place would take over 9 years to get them confirmed based on the deliberate delay of the Democrats. No president should have to put up with that sort of thing. And it has to do with the filibusters being used by the Democrats, often on non-controversial nominees. Of the names that are already been put forth by President Trump, it's going to take over 2.5 years just to get through that backlog that's already waiting in the Senate because of this delay. Mike Pompeo should be confirmed. He should be confirmed quickly. It is only partisan politics and the Democrats that are slowing down this entire process to try to prevent President Trump from putting his team together to lead the nation.
So what happens in this delaying tactic on nominees? Two things happen. One is it makes it harder for the president to get his team in place, to get his nominees confirmed. But two, it also makes it impossible for us to do anything else. So in the first 20 hours of debate on the circuit judge that we'll vote on in a few minutes, there were 20 minutes of debate that had anything to do with the judge. And that happens over and over again, except sometimes there's zero debate for nominees, particularly judges, that then get 71, 81, 98 votes. It's an unacceptable thing to let that continue to happen. Tomorrow in the Rules Committee, we will mark up the rule that would return us to the time limits that the Congress had, that the Senate had in 2013 and 2014. 78 senators voted, many of them still here, to have those time limits that were much more reasonable. We'll mark that bill up tomorrow. I think we anticipate a largely partisan vote to get that bill out of committee, but we will get it out of committee and see what happens once that return to a standing order that would be a permanent standing order this time. But there's no reason that you should have been willing to do this in 2013 and not willing to do this in 2018.
It's clear that the entire agenda of the minority is procedural sabotage. Procedural sabotage to stop every nominee, drag them out as long as they can to obstruct at historic and unprecedented levels. Listen to some of the reasons why people decided they would vote against Mike Pompeo. It's because as CIA director, he met with the North Korean leader, but they didn't tell the committee. That's sour grapes. That's not a reason to vote against a nominee. One member's voting against the nominee who said they were concerned about the workforce at CIA, despite the fact that no fear reports no fear comments at the CIA have decreased by 40% under Mike Pompeo's leadership. One senator said that he's done everything he expected him to do at CIA and does not regret the vote that he made. But apparently that's why he's going to vote against Mike Pompeo to be Secretary of State. This is procedural sabotage. The American people deserve better. Let's move forward, confirm Mike Pompeo, and get to work on this backlog of public servants that this country needs to make their government work.
Yes.
Yeah. Nancy?
Do you think that Ronny Jackson should withdraw his nomination for VA Secretary? And do you think this points to a larger problem with vetting at the White House?
Well, with regard to the Jackson nomination, I'm waiting to hear from both Chairman Isakson and from the administration what they believe the way forward should be, and we'll take our cues from them.
Leader McConnell.
Yeah.
You met with Dr. Jackson a few days ago. Were you aware at that time of some of these problems, and if so, what's your thought?
Well, as I just said to Nancy, I'm going to wait and see what the president recommends and what Chairman Isakson recommends, and that'll make clear what the appropriate way forward is.
But you weren't aware at that time when you met with
How many times do you want me to say the same thing? Yeah.
Can you talk about the vetting process? Is there anything different that needs to happen in the vetting process?
Look, it's up to the administration to do the vetting, and I think those are the kind of questions you ought to direct to them. And I'm assuming at some point here, it'll be cleared up as to the way forward with regard to the new VA secretary.
And also on the
Yeah.
the president said today that this process that the VA secretary might deal with here in the Senate might not be worth it. Is he suggesting that perhaps he would withdraw? Have you gotten that signal yet from the White House?
With the same subject? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the earlier part. No, I haven't gotten a signal yet. We're waiting for a signal. Yeah.
Some kind of shift with some members of your conference related to Scott Pruitt is very much in favor of what he's done, but the continued allegations drip are frustrating, now wondering if he should stay on. Where do you stand on that currently?
Yeah, well, I'm a supporter of the administrator of EPA. A number of different members have said different things about some of the revelations, and I would suggest you direct your questions to them, those who have expressed some reservations.
Are you concerned about ethical problems with the EPA administrator?
I think we'll just see. I think he's going to make an appearance up here, is he not, this week? I expect there'll be a lot of interest.
So will there be time for appropriations on the floor, and do you support an open amendment process?
What or what?
Do you support an open amendment process?
Yeah, well, the Democratic leader and Chairman Shelby and Senator Leahy and I have been talking about the whole appropriations process, which we all know is completely broken. And the only way to fix it is to start passing bills. We have a top line. We know what we're going to spend, and it'll be an interesting test of whether or not we can go forward on something we've already agreed to on a bipartisan basis to try to prevent what everybody professes to hate, which is ending up with a big omnibus. So the four of us are going to be meeting this week to talk about the way forward, and I hope we'll be able to reach an agreement to do that in a sensible and bipartisan way and process as many of these bills as we can. Everybody professes to want to do that, so we're going to have an opportunity to test whether that's in fact the case. Thank you.
What a great job he did.
Is that what that's called? Chairman Cohen?
Just right here. Right here.
No.
Right here in front of me. That's good. Okay, beggars can't be choosers. Right there. We can do better. I mean, there's just been.
I said everybody says it takes my picture.
Right over here.
Right here. Okay.
Here, right at me.
I mean, just
We got to do
send me
something.
the least offensive one.
No, we'll get something.
Thank you.
This is awful.
But there have been, but if you talk to Brian Nichols over so I don't know the context. So check with her. Oh. No. And I mean, for my mother, that I'll bring, this is
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm proud to be joined by Senator Murray and Senator Carper. Now, this week in the Rules Committee, our Republican colleagues are trying to move forward with a partisan proposal to ram through President Trump's nominees at even a faster rate. This push comes in the midst of yet another example of the Trump administration's failure to adequately and properly vet their nominees. Mitch McConnell said it's the job of the administration to vet the nominees. Well, they're doing a pretty poor job. And let's just look at Admiral Jackson. There are already all sorts of allegations about Admiral Jackson, and there's a lot of discussion that maybe his nominee should be withdrawn. It's pretty easy to guess that he wasn't thoroughly vetted. You might even speculate, I wasn't there, so I don't know if this is true, that they were in the room together and President Trump, in his usual quick way, said, "Why don't you become Secretary of Veterans Affairs?" And off he went. But this isn't once. Time and time again, we have seen nominees inadequately vetted. And you'll hear from Senator Murray and Senator Carper about a few of those. So our Republican colleagues bemoan the pace of the nominations, but we see with the administration's quick, sloppy vetting process that the Senate to vet nominees is more important than ever before. Just let's look at the cabinet. It lies in shambles just 15 months into the Trump presidency. President Trump's on his second HHS secretary after his first resigned in disgrace for ethical problems. He's seeking confirmation of his Secretary of State after he fired the first one. His nominee for Labor Secretary withdrew after troubling ethical issues. His EPA administrator is under siege for blatant corruption. His nominee for CIA Director faces serious questions from both sides of the aisle about her previous engagement in torture. And now the second nominee for Veterans Affairs is on the rocks. simply because the Trump administration didn't adequately vet him. The cabinet is turning into a sad game of musical chairs, and the American people are losing out. The administration has repeatedly named nominees and asked questions later. We are proud of our role in thoroughly vetting the nominees because the administration isn't. Senator Langford's proposal is misguided, it is wrong, it couldn't be put forward at a worst possible time. This week has shown that the President's nominees deserve scrutiny, not automatic confirmation. Senator Murray.
Thank you, Leader Schumer. One of the most important constitutional roles that we have here in the Senate is to advise and consent on presidential nominees, to scrutinize them and make sure they are qualified for the job. We'll put the public and public interests ahead of special interests, and that they don't have ethical challenges or financial issues or other concerns. Now, this doesn't mean that we have to agree with everything they would do, of course not, but it means there is a certain level of scrutiny we owe it to our constituents to apply and to protect. This should be pretty basic work here in the Senate, but it is more important now than ever before. We have a president and an administration that has made it very clear they aren't as concerned with ethical lapses as most people across the country are. We have nominees and secretaries that have had to step aside due to ethical lapses and concerns. And as was recently reported, the office in charge of vetting nominees and other personnel, the Presidential Personnel Office, is in, quote, chaos and is, quote, plagued by inexperience. So Democrats have made it very clear. We're not going to allow nominees to be jammed through without proper scrutiny and debate. No cutting corners, no playing fast and loose with the facts, and no cutting off debate. That's wrong, and we will not stand for it. Now, hopefully, the events of the last 24 hours have made it very clear why this is so important. When this country sends men and women into war, we have an obligation to care for them long after they return. Critical to fulfilling that promise is a strong VA led by a highly qualified VA secretary who is free from ethical conflicts. We know that the millions of veterans who get their care through the VA know that as well. Yet President Trump, who paid a whole lot of lip service to veterans while he was out in the campaign trail, either didn't care or didn't bother to take the time to ensure he was sending over a fully vetted nominee, a nominee who wouldn't force Republican and Democratic members of our Veterans Affairs Committee to hit pause on the whole process one day before a confirmation hearing. It is sloppy, it's disrespectful to our veterans, and it's wrong. But while I'm deeply frustrated by the Trump administration's sloppiness, I have faith in the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, who's ready to dig into this, conduct the proper oversight and scrutiny that is needed to assure that this nominee is up to the task. And I am hopeful that we can get the facts we need, debate them as appropriate, and do our jobs as senators free from any political attempts to jam this nominee or any nominee through. So I hope Republican leaders are looking at this and taking it as a lesson. It's on us here in the Senate to do the hard work to ensure the American people, especially our veterans, are getting the leadership they deserve. Republican leaders are today talking about finding ways to rush this process and cut corners. They should be talking about ways to do this thoroughly and right. Someone has to do the work on behalf of our American families and the ones we represent. And if the past year and a half is any indication, it's certainly not going to be President Trump or his administration who's doing that. Thank you.
Senator Carper.
Thank you, Leader. Delaware is the first state. Before anyone else ratified the Constitution, December 7, 1787, we did. I like to say that Delaware for one whole week was the entire United States of America. We opened up things, led in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, and others. I think it's turned out pretty well for the most part until now. And the folks up in Philadelphia, when they were working on the Constitution that we ratified on December 7, 1787, they disagreed on a lot of things. They weren't sure how women should be treated, how slaves should be treated. They weren't sure if there should be one branch of the government, two, three branches of the government. Should there be a bicameral legislature, unicameral legislature? Are we going to have judges? If so, how are they going to be selected, nominated, confirmed, and so forth? One thing they absolutely agreed on, every one of them, they did not want a king. They did not want a king. They put in place this intricate system of checks and balances that we have now lived with for some 240 years. Churchill described democracy as the worst form of government devised by wit of man, except for all the rest. This is a hard way to govern. This is a hard way to govern. I served as governor in Delaware for 8 years, from 1993 to 2001. Made many nominations for cabinet positions, judicial positions, and other. Every one was confirmed. We had a Republican House, a Democratic Senate. They were all confirmed. And the reason why is we vetted the men and women we nominated, because the legislature did their job in vetting as well. This administration does not vet well. Otherwise, we would not have Scott Pruitt submitted as the head of EPA. He was a pitch well telegraphed. You don't have to go back to his tenure as Attorney General of that state, as a state legislator in that state. There's a great layout, extensive article in the New York Times just a couple of days ago that just lays out what kind of person he is, the kind of ethical quality he brings, and the kind of misdeeds that he's capable of doing, even long before he was nominated. Long before he was nominated. We should not be surprised with what we're seeing literally coming up every day. He should never have been nominated, should never have been confirmed. He shouldn't be serving today. And the sooner that he returns to Oklahoma. In fact, I said I was thinking of buying an airline ticket, one way, Washington, D.C. to Oklahoma, not first class coach. The more I think about it, I think I'll buy a train ticket for him. Send him back home where he came from, and hopefully we'll get a more worthy candidate. This administration has submitted the names of a number of good people that have been confirmed. I'm just going to mention a half dozen or so of them. Sonny Perdue, Secretary of Agriculture. Jim Mattis, Secretary of Defense. John Kelly was unanimously confirmed, I believe, as Secretary of Homeland Security. Robert Lighthizer, our trade rep. Nikki Haley, UN. There are any number of them. They do their job, vet candidates, make sure they're not just capable, intellectually capable of doing the job, but morally capable as well. They'll get confirmed. Last thing, P.S. Several years ago, Senator Schumer, I think working with Lamar, I want to say it was Lamar Alexander, yes, they actually reviewed all kinds of positions for which there was a presidential nomination, and came up with some, I thought, very good ideas of how we could streamline that process. And there's no reason why we shouldn't or couldn't revisit that and improve on the work that they had done. That makes a whole lot more sense than what's been suggested to us by James Lankford. P.S. James Lankford, I know him well, served with him on the Homeland Security Committee. I think he's an excellent senator and a very good human being. And this is not a well thought out proposal. I think we can do better than that and better than this, and I hope that we will.
Thank you, Senator Carper. Senator Murray, questions?
Pompeo, and that it's important that the Senate make a big show of support for the Secretary of State nominee. Do you agree with that?
Well, let me tell you, I'm going to oppose the nomination of Secretary Pompeo. I haven't said anything till today. I met with him several times while he was a CIA director. We had very good discussions. I was pleasantly surprised that he seemed to take a stronger stand on Russia and sanctions than the President did. Then I saw him, we talked foreign policy when he was nominated, and I said I'm going to wait and hear his hearing. I was disappointed in his hearing, so I asked for a second meeting. We did not talk any foreign policy issues. I asked him two things. I said, first, to me, even more important than the great decisions that a Secretary of State has to make is rule of law in America. Would he be willing, since there don't seem to be many in the administration, to speak out publicly and forcefully that the President should not fire Mueller or Rosenstein? He demurred. Second, I said, now that you're Secretary of State, you're in a different position. Would you walk back some of the really nasty comments that he has made about Muslim Americans or people from South Asia, he demurred. I am voting no for those reasons, and I think people have good reasons to vote no for Secretary Pompeo, both on the foreign policy sphere and in these areas.
Do you think that Ronnie Jackson should have brought this into consideration for the judiciary and these officers?
Well, there are so many allegations, most of which have not been made public yet, but are very serious. I'll wait to see if those are corroborated. But clearly, this nominee was not vetted. He doesn't, my initial reaction was that he doesn't seem qualified to run a large agency, but I was willing to wait and hear the hearings. But the new allegations are much more serious than that. We'll see if they're true. I don't know if they are. And that's why I'd withhold directly answering your question.
Senator, would you support the idea of a jobs guarantee for everyone who's unemployed in the United States, like Senator Sanders proposed?
Well, I'd like to look at his proposal. I think we should do everything we can to get people jobs, and I'd look at his proposal. I haven't studied it yet.
Peter Schumer, what is the right balance between what the vetting should be by the administration on any nominee and then the advice and consent that the Senate provides on someone? We keep hearing mixed things from what, whether it's in shambles down at the White House, whether the Senate is doing its job up here. What is that balance?
Well, the balance is that you have to err on the side of caution. Our Republican colleagues, let me give you one example. There's a nominee that was just filled on the circuit court, and this was from Wisconsin. That seat was vacant for 7 years because Ron Johnson withheld his blue slip. 7 years. Now they're complaining that we want 30 hours when they nominate someone else. It smacks to me of a double standard. Because I think the bipartisan agreement set a very good tone, and the fact that Leader McConnell has publicly said that he will not go for rescissions has also increased the ability of us to work together. And so this afternoon, actually, Senator McConnell and myself, Senator Leahy, and Senator Shelby are meeting, and I think all four of us have a great desire to start doing regular order on appropriations processes. If we can do that in the way that we've outlined in the past, 50-50 on defense, which was set by the CAPS deal, no poison pill riders, and bipartisan comity when things come to the floor, we might have a good chance to do it this year. I'm more optimistic than I've been in the past. I would say that Senator Langford's proposal does cast a sour note because it seems so partisan. And, I didn't hear 3 words when Senator Langford spoke on the floor. Blue slip, 60 votes, Merrick Garland. Seems history is only partially remembered. Yes. I don't think. Yeah. No, we don't need a rules change. We just have to get some comity here, and that's what our meeting's all about. Last one.
If Republicans bring the ambassador to Germany nomination to the floor, will Democrats filibuster?
Well, we'll have to see if they bring it to the floor. I haven't talked to my caucus about this. Any one member can block, as you know. Okay? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, John.